Or is this a perverts convention?
Welcome to the Permanent Record Podcast, 007 mini broadcast, a discussion on the music of James Bond. From 1962 up through today, we'll cover it all. Unless Spectre gets to us first.
Welcome, everybody. We are back to talk about James Bond today. You can hear the sounds of the James Bond theme ringing out behind us, courtesy of our friend Will Crudson of Scant Regard, She Made Me Do It, and, of course, Adam Ant's touring band. This is a special version of the James Bond theme mixed with one of the biggest dance hits of the 90s, I guess, right?
Yeah, the 90s. Can you believe it? We've got a 90s song as part of our theme song now.
And we're getting ready to talk about a 70s movie.
Wow, we're all over the place here.
So we want to thank Will because he released a video of himself on Instagram a year ago or so, and he was kind of mashing up Everybody Dance Now, and he was mashing it up with the James Bond theme, and I thought it was really cool, and I wrote, when you release this, I'm going to steal it and use it as the opening song for our podcast. And he never did release it, but he did record the special version just for us to use. So thanks so much to Will. He is a gentleman and a scholar.
Yes, thank you, Will, for the exclusive special version of this song. It's so cool to have such a cool song to introduce our podcast with.
Indeed. And speaking of cool, we are once again joined by our very cool Bond friend. He's an author. He is
another gentleman and a scholar.
He is a gentleman and a scholar. He's a social media celebrity in the world of James Bond. And it's, of course, I'm talking about Robbie Sims. How are you, Robbie?
Hello, Brian. Hello, Sarah. How are you both?
We are doing great. We are so happy to have you here again with us. It's been far too long.
It's a pleasure. Always a pleasure. It's good to catch up with you guys. Yeah, I think it's been over a year since we did our last one. So we're well due. Get into the Roger era now.
Indeed. I knew you were looking forward to Roger because View to a Kill was your favorite movie, right? That's the one you've seen the most.
Yeah. You know, that comes with a caveat. I don't think it's the best movie, but it's certainly a personal favorite. And Roger, I think, is my Bond if I had to choose one. So, yeah, very excited to get into the era.
Yeah, I'm glad we can do this together. Now, you, of course, you're big in the Bond world on the social media scene. I'm going to sound like a really old man with that. You're big on the social media scene, Robbie. And on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads, you are at Quantum of Silliness.
That's right. Yeah. I used to be on what was formerly known as Twitter, but I'm quite glad to have closed that door behind me, I think. So, yeah, you can find me on the other ones. I'm having a more modest success on those ones, but it's still fun. It's fun to churn stuff out and put it out there. And hopefully in the coming months or years, there will be a lot more to talk about as we sort of wind up to Bond 26, hopefully happening.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, it's been slim pickings. Even when Bond was not in a state of transition like this, movies were few and far between. Even when Daniel Craig was, I mean, we had a 5-year gap between Skyfall and Spectre, right? And then COVID slowed down No Time to Die. So, man, movies were not coming out very, very often. Hopefully that will change going forward. And before we talk about the movies, I do want to point out, it's been a while since this came out, but of course your handle on social media, Quantum of Silliness, stems from your little book that I'll show you, Robbie, in case you're not familiar with it. Quantum of Silliness, The Peculiar World of Bond, James Bond by Robbie Sims, which everyone, if you haven't picked it up already, you can get it on any of your better online booksellers. And we highly recommend
it's probably available in lots of charity shops by now, I imagine. I imagine people have probably had their time with it. No, I'm doing myself a disservice there. Thank you for the plug.
No, we love that book, and we're happy to plug it. We think it's a hoot.
Speaking of charity shops and James Bond together, let me switch this monitor for a second. Something that we talked about last year on our podcast, I forget exactly what it was. It wasn't a Bond episode, but Bond came up. I discovered somebody named Jeff Love. Are you familiar with Jeff Love?
I don't think so.
He's some sort of like British band leader. He was in the British military, and when he got out, he started conducting orchestras and things. And he sort of seems to do like cover versions of popular songs, like albums full of songs that he didn't write, but everybody knows, and his orchestra plays them. He did a whole album of Bond covers. Jeff Love and his orchestra, big Bond movie themes. But it was something that here in the U.S., it was never released. When we mentioned it and I said I was sad that I couldn't find it anywhere, people started writing to us and saying like, oh, Jeff Love is all over the charity shops. Like if you go into charity shops, you can get his records for like $1 or a pound or whatever. So somebody was kind enough to get it and send it to me. So I now have Jeff Love from the charity shop. I love it.
Nice. I mean, yeah, Jeff Love has even the name suggests sort of lounge kind of 70s, a little bit kitschy. I don't know if it's like that, but I'm already on board. I'm already tempted.
All right. Well, now you'll have to search them out in your local charity shops.
So sorry for that little sidestep there, but we were talking about the Bond movies, and guys, since we met last time to talk about James Bond, so much has changed. So much has happened in the world of Bond. So before we talk about today's song, let's just touch on that. I mean, Robbie, how are you feeling about Bond right now?
It's a sort of a scary limbo time because, we have no real idea what Amazon's plans are. I've got to say, the fact that they've announced Denis Villeneuve as the director is very good as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. I love his work previous, and it gives me something to sort of latch onto in terms of some hope, because without being too cynical about it, my sort of fears with Eon no longer pulling the strings and Amazon Prime basically calling the shots, things could go in a very strange direction. Strange is not necessarily a bad thing, but I think that Denis is on record as saying he is a Bond fan. He knows the films well. So I'm hoping with him at the helm, we could get something quite interesting. Things will definitely change. It's going to be not so much a reboot as a sort of a reconfiguring of everything. But as long as they keep certain elements, I want to hear the Bond theme. I want to hear some of the catchphrases. I want some decent action. Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens. The excitement is sort of, it's a little bit tempered. I'm sort of still a bit anxious about what might occur. But when we start getting news about casting and shooting locations and stuff like that, that's when the excitement will really kick in, and we can all start to really fanboy out about it.
Right. You know what I'm really hoping doesn't happen? Although I think, I don't know, with the choice of director and writer, the guy they've hired a writer, and it's somebody who's worked on Pinky Blinders, right? That's
right, Stephen Knight. Yeah.
Okay. I've never seen that show, but I've had people tell me that they really like it. Hopefully that's a good sign. But I'm kind of tired of every Bond movie connecting to the three that came before it. Like the Daniel Craig movies, at the end of the day, they all sort of touched upon each other and connected to each other. I'm sort of over that. I want to go back to how it used to be, but I think that the producers may see that as a legitimate step backwards, and maybe that kind of Bond is a thing of the past. What do you think
I agree with you, actually. I would love to go back to just a one-and-done standalone movie where you don't have to have any knowledge of what's happened before. There's a sort of film that you can just stumble across on TV on a sort of rainy afternoon, watch it, and you don't need any other context of what's going on. But my fear is that these days cinematic universes are such a sort of buzzword that, I think Marvel has influenced things so much now that there's always a need to tie things into a wider universe. And Amazon Prime will want to do spin-off TV shows maybe. So there is a sort of a fear that things might continue to be quite universed, sort of a linear thing where you have to know the three films previous to catch up with what's happening, which would be a shame. I agree with you. I'd like to do standalone adventures now.
The Bond universe doesn't need that. I mean, there's so much content already. You can jump in anywhere. And I think that's a very big benefit to not only the audience at large, but the creators, right? If you're tied to, well, it has to fit in with this, and that just restricts you. And, we want them to have as much freedom and creativity as possible. And it is better for the audience if they can just say, oh, I'd only want to watch this film. If you want new fans to become engaged, the best thing is to just give them something that they can enjoy on its own and not have to worry about this, that, and the other.
Sure. And also, unless you've mapped it all out from the get-go, if you've got like a 5-film cycle and it's all pre-planned, then fine. But with the Daniel Craig era, obviously they were making it up as they went along, and they got themselves, they painted themselves into a corner with, I don't know, stuff like having the organization was called Quantum, but then, that actually wasn't called Quantum. It was just a subset of Spectre because they got the rights back to use Spectre. It was all like a bit messy. If you're going to do a contained universe, it needs to kind of make sense. So hopefully, whatever we get next, they won't just make it up as they go along. They will have a proper plan. I have a feeling Denis Villeneuve said he only wants to do one. So maybe, Brian, you might get your wish and we'll just get a self-contained thing. But whatever it is, because we're reintroducing the whole world of Bond and a new Bond, it will have to be a reset. And I imagine a lot of the plot will involve him earning his 00 status or something, which is kind of tedious because we've been there, done that with Daniel Craig. But I imagine they'll want to introduce him in that kind of way.
With everything starting over and starting at the beginning again, I'm really going to miss the Moneypenny and the Q of the Daniel Craig films. I think that after so many years of iconic actors in those roles, they did a really good job of casting new people to play them. And I'm sad that they're going to be gone.
Sure. Ben Whishaw, who played Q, is kind of a national treasure status almost over here now because he also voices Paddington. So he's got these two like huge roles, and it'll be a shame if they don't use him again. I mean, when they cast with Daniel, they kept Judi Dench on, even though that made no sense sort of in the timeline. She was still M in this new universe, and nobody seemed to complain about that because it's Judi Dench. Why would you complain? So hopefully maybe they'll keep hold of some cast members like Ralph Fiennes and Ben Whishaw, but I have a feeling they'll just want to start a whole clean slate with this one.
Now, I understand most things are going to be new, but I'd love to see them get David Arnold back to do the score and just be a connector between, maybe they don't want any connectors between the past and present, but other than John Barry, David Arnold is the best Bond composer that we've had, and I would love to see him return.
Absolutely. I think if you want to make a link to the previous films without making it too, obvious, the music and the sound is the way to go, because to most audiences, maybe not to us because we're particularly paying attention to the music, but to most audiences, that is sort of a background thing which you're not paying attention to while the film is unfolding. So yeah, David Arnold would be an amazing return to the series. I definitely second that one.
Yeah,
I'll third it.
Nice. That's 3 votes.
All right.
Did you see Q the Music is doing a special show with him?
Indeed, yes, in London. And they're also coming to my new hometown of Cheltenham, I think in June. Not with David Arnold.
Right.
So yeah, I'm excited to go and see them for that, for sure.
That's awesome. I'm so jealous.
Wonderful.
So yeah, I'm jealous you're going to get to see them. That'll be a great show.
Yeah, they always put on a good show. Yeah.
So maybe later this year, we'll get to do another one of these Bond episodes as we talk about one of the greatest. Well, I mean, not today, but the next one that we have to do is one of the greatest Bond themes of all time. I'm sure you guys both agree, The Man with the Golden Gun.
My.
So maybe we can.
Extraordinary thing to say.
Yeah. So maybe we can time that to correspond with the announcement of a Bond actor or something later this year.
Boy.
We'll have to see what happens.
Surely the only way to celebrate. Yeah. Stick some Lulu on.
So I shouldn't have mentioned Lulu because now everyone has Lulu on the mind, and the song is so wonderful and fantastic and universally beloved. But now we've got to talk about Paul McCartney.
Oh, we were ready to talk about Lulu. Instead, we're going to talk about Sir Paul McCartney. Okay.
So that is what we're here to talk about today. The theme song for the first Roger Moore movie, Live and Let Die, and that is by the Beatle, Paul McCartney. I don't know, Robbie, I guess this is happening all over the world, but right now, Paul McCartney is kind of in the spotlight again for his work in this time period because there's sort of like a movement to sort of re-examine the Wings era.
That's right. And there's a new documentary that's just landed on Amazon Prime called Man on the Run. Have you watched that yet?
We did. We went and saw it in the theater, and that's when we got sick. We saw it on the big screen,
gosh.
and then 3 days later, we were deathly ill, but had nothing to do with wings.
Yeah, I don't think Paul McCartney can be directly accused of making you unwell, but that's a sad state of affairs. I didn't even realize it was released in the cinemas. I don't think it got a cinematic release over here, so that's quite exciting for you.
Yeah, we had it for 2 days. One night only originally, but then there was evidently enough of a demand that they did it again a couple of nights later. So it was cool to see that.
Well, it was a good documentary. I sort of had hopes that they would cover Live and Let Die itself quite thoroughly, and in actual fact, it sort of got glossed over, didn't it? There was a little clip of it and a little bit of a footage, but nobody really talked in any great length about it. So we shall do that instead.
Okay.
That's right. It falls on us. There's also a book that came out maybe in December that's sort of a companion piece to the movie, and it's an oral history, so it's not really written as a book. It's just kind of like Paul says this, Linda says this, and they cover Live and Let Die in more depth in that companion piece. So if people are interested, that's a good place to find Paul commenting on this song. This movie came out in 1973. I was only 2, so I didn't see it in the theater.
Yeah.
Robbie, you weren't born yet, were you?
Yeah, I was -5.
Yeah. So none of us saw this one originally on the big screen. Have you ever seen it on the big screen?
I have actually, yes. For the 60th anniversary, they showed, I think, all of them sort of in the cinema one at a time sequentially. So I made sure I went and saw it at my local a few years ago. And it was a surprisingly packed house. Live and Let Die is one of those films, in the UK at least, is always on TV. And it actually holds the record for the highest rated movie ever shown on UK TV when it had its premiere back in the day. It must have been sometime beginning of the 80s. And I think something like half the population tuned in to watch Live and Let Die.
Yeah, I read that. It was so interesting.
It's incredible. And granted, like back in those days, there wasn't really much else to do on a cold winter's evening. You kind of had to watch one of the 3 channels that were showing anything, but there's still an amazing statistic. Yeah, I think for that reason, it just gets shown a lot, maybe in the hope that one day they will attract the same kind of audience. But yeah, it gets a lot of airtime and a lot of love, I think, in the UK, this one.
Yeah, I saw that fact myself. I tried to find out if it was still true because that article or that survey was done in February of 1998. But Live and Let Die was the highest rated movie ever to air on TV, attracting 23.5 million viewers. And it was the number 3 all-time TV show, or the number 3 thing ever shown on TV in the UK. Only 2 things beat it. And these are not anything that I think Sarah and I know, but you probably will. The number 1 show in the history of the UK television was an episode of Only Fools and Horses. That's
right. Yeah. That's a comedy that was probably shown on Christmas Day. Yeah, that we had a tradition of always showing a new episode on Christmas Day, and that was always a ratings winner.
Okay. It wasn't by much. It was maybe a million more people. I mean, a million people is a lot of people, but. And then number 2, which was just a very small difference, was an episode of something called To the Manor Born.
Yeah, that's another sitcom, which is, I think, from the 70s, so a little bit before my time. Again, I think, back in the day when you only had 3 channels and viewers weren't splintered across the internet and doing all sorts of other things, it was much easier to attract tens of millions of viewers, which you could never get these days. But
right.
Yeah, so Live and Let Die is in hallowed company there.
Sure is. While Live and Let Die has gone on to be in hallowed company, when this movie was being first talked about, it was a time of turmoil for Bond because, they were introducing a new actor as James Bond and things didn't go too well last time they tried that. I mean, it resulted in what I consider to be my favorite movie, On Her Majesty's Secret Service. But in terms of the box office, it wasn't quite where they wanted it to be. Even though it wasn't a failure, people sort of exaggerate how poorly it was received. If you go back and check the box office for that year, I think we talked about it on our episodes, did pretty well. But along with Bond leaving, longtime composer John Barry departs as well. I mean, I know this fact, but I hadn't really thought about it. John Barry did all the previous movies.
Yeah.
Oh, well, except for the first one.
I hadn't really appreciated that either. Yeah, he was so ingrained in the sound of Bond by this point that to not have him must have been quite a risk.
Yeah. So he leaves for a number of reasons, and I just made a list of them. I love John Barry. I love reading about him and talking about him, so I did just want to tell you guys why he felt he needed to leave. So there was the incident that we talked about last time with Harry Saltzman when John Barry played him Diamonds Are Forever theme song, and Harry just thought it was terrible. It was like a filthy song that he would never sign off on. So that didn't please John Barry. And he also didn't really like working with Guy Hamilton on Diamonds Are Forever. They sort of didn't think the same way in terms of music and film. There was a switch with Roger Moore. There was going to be a switch to more lighthearted tone instead of suspenseful tone in the movie, and he sort of thinks it was a mistake to do away with the espionage aspects of it. And then another thing, and probably the main thing I would think to him, even if he wouldn't come out and say it, is regardless of how good his Bond work was, it didn't really get acclaim, like in terms of Academy Awards and things like that. The Bond music up to this point had been pretty much ignored by the Academy. And in 1971, he did a soundtrack for Mary, Queen of Scots, and that was nominated for an Academy Award. Between 71 and 73, he did a number of movies and musicals with great success. And I think he sort of wanted to be able to, say, I'm an Academy Award winning composer. And I'm not going to be able to do that if I keep returning to Bond.
So you think it was he felt almost like it was a step backwards to continue working on Bond?
Right. After he did reach, he was nominated by branching out a little bit. Why would you come back? Because he wants to get the acclaim,
Yeah, I'm sure there was a sort of element of snobbery there amongst award people who were choosing who gets nominated, because the Bond films were almost like a factory at this point, and they were churning them out every couple of years. And maybe they just weren't considered award material, where they were sort of somehow considered beneath that. And maybe John Barry was quite happy to sort of, step away for a minute and focus on other projects that would maybe get him some more recognition and more acclaim.
Yeah. One of the books that I was reading to get these notes actually has a quote from him where he said that he was unhappy with his last few Bond scores and that he heard them as just attempts to recreate Goldfinger, which I didn't like seeing, because I think, for instance, You Only Live Twice is a much better score than Goldfinger's score. Taken just as a musical document. Those songs are so good.
Yeah. And he still has some fuel in the tank. I mean, we'll get there eventually, but I think The Living Daylights is also a very strong score from him. So his final one. He wasn't just sort of ticking the boxes or running on empty. He had some good stuff still to pull out.
Yeah. I hated to see him badmouth his own work because I love it so much. Honor Majesties was also in that era that he's sort of badmouthing, and that was an incredible score.
Right. And that was a little bit more innovative with the use of the synthesizers, I wonder if he was using hindsight and rather not actually feeling that way at the time.
But anyway, because of John Barry departing, they've got to find someone to take over. The first move that they make towards that goal is they get Paul McCartney to come write this theme song, which is a pretty huge get, I would think, even though maybe not everyone on the Bond team realizes that. Okay, we're going to punch in here for just 1 second. This is Brian and Sarah.
Hi there.
Robbie's not here. He is traveling the world right now, so we couldn't get him back for this update to the episode.
Yeah, that's right. We have some additional information that we should have shared at the time we recorded, but we didn't. It's important enough, though, we want to share it now.
And it's actually kind of lucky maybe that we didn't share it. So anyway, you just heard me make that cryptic comment that maybe not everyone in the Bond camp was excited by the Paul McCartney song, which was a reference to a story that I was planning to bring up later, but none of us on the call actually brought it up.
Yeah, this is a story that has become pretty famous and pretty popular over the years, especially due to George Martin retelling it over and over again. It's about who was supposed to sing the song. George Martin likes to tell the story that Harry Saltzman actually contacted George Martin after Paul McCartney had provided the song, and Saltzman was like, "So who do you think should sing this song? Maybe somebody like Thelma Houston," and George was like, "No, I'm pretty sure Paul is expecting to sing this song himself." So
So that's an oft-told tale.
Yeah, in fact, if you look on Wikipedia, you're going to see an entry to that effect with that story, with that anecdote.
So I was actually kind of bummed that none of us remembered to tell it, but it turns out it was a good thing, even though we just told it, because I got a text the other day from my friend Terry, who is the biggest Paul McCartney expert I know. And I just told him in passing that, oh, hey, I'm sitting here editing an episode on Paul McCartney, Live and Let Die. And he said, well, I hope you didn't tell the story about George Martin talking to Harry Saltzman about who was going to sing the song. And I said, oh, it's funny you say that because we didn't tell it and I'm upset. And he said, well, you shouldn't be because it's not true. And he pointed me in the direction of the first volume of the excellent series, The McCartney Legacy. There are 2 books out so far in this set, and it's very in-depth, the history of Paul McCartney and his solo career. I read the Love and Let Die book leading up to this, and I read the Wings book that accompanied the documentary, but I didn't have time to read the McCartney Legacy, even though I have it. I can't spend all my time reading about Paul McCartney. But actually, in this book, it talks about this situation, and it says it's really just a tale that George Martin told, and that Paul repeated because he realized it was a good story. Even though Paul knew about his contract that was in place, he saw George tell the story, which sort of comes from some of George's confusion. And Paul was like, oh, that's a good story to put in my bag of Wings stories, so I'm going to tell it too. But really, he knew that it was not true. But it turns out that George Martin met with Harry Saltzman, and George was not familiar with the script of the movie or the shooting schedule.
Yeah.
And he didn't realize something that we're going to talk about in this episode. We haven't gotten to it yet, but we're going to talk about the fact that the song is actually sung by a nightclub singer in the movie. Harry Saltzman was asking, who do you think we should have sing it in the movie? But George didn't understand that because he didn't know that it was going to be in the movie, which who would if you haven't had access to the script?
Well, right. And, that's never happened in a James Bond movie before. So he understandably thought in the movie would be during the opening title credits, right?
Right. So the McCartney Legacy mentions that George Martin had produced the Shirley Bassey sessions for her James Bond songs. So Harry Saltzman said, well, he has experience with Shirley Bassey. He might be a good resource to ask who's another female singer in that vein that we could reach out to. He suggested Thelma Houston, and George was just confused.
Yeah.
So Harry was sort of embarrassed, it says in the book, and he just sort of dropped it. He realized that George didn't understand, and he didn't want to embarrass him further, so he just let it go. So that's what is in the McCartney Legacy. So that tale, which is told quite often, is evidently not even really true. Thanks to our friend Terry for pointing us in the direction of that book that was already on our shelf.
Very good.
All right, back to the episode. But the path between James Bond and Paul McCartney is kind of interesting. It all stems from this guy named Ron Cass. Did you guys see that name?
No, I did not.
So in 1968, he was hired to run Apple Records, which was the Beatles' record label. And then I think in 1970, he went somewhere else to another record label. In 1971, he was named to the head of CDF Limited, which was Harry Saltzman's non-Bond film production company. And then, because he did such a good job there, he was named the head of Harry Saltzman's music publishing company. So, because Ron had worked with the Beatles at Apple Records, he reaches out to Paul and says, you have any interest in writing a Bond song? And Paul says over the years, numerous times, he said that, for British songwriters, that's always something that you keep in the back of your mind is, hey, I would love to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did see that Paul McCartney had been considered for Diamonds Are Forever. Was that something that you read as well?
I did not ever see that.
That's what I heard the first time that he was considered was actually for Diamonds Are Forever. I don't know
so
if that's
he's in the
true.
mix. Yeah. I mean, the documentary that I mentioned, Man on the Run, that certainly seemed to suggest that after the Beatles split up, he wasn't considered maybe the coolest of the four. And his solo material kind of didn't attract the same commercial or critical success that the Beatles did by far. So in actual fact, Live and Let Die, which comes maybe 3 or 4 years after the Beatles split, although there's a bit of a grey area about when they actually split up because of all the legal stuff. But they hadn't released anything for a long time. And I think Paul probably needed some sort of a commercial hit, which obviously a Bond theme will hopefully deliver. So it sounds like it was a match made in heaven for both people. I mean, the Bond producers and Paul certainly is an opportunity for both of them to do something pretty good.
It was pretty cool recently to get ready for the Wings documentary that we were talking about. Sarah and I watched the Beatles anthology, which is now on Disney+. It came out in the 90s, and I never saw it for whatever reason. Even though I love the Beatles, I never got to see it. So this was our first time seeing it. But they mention in that Beatles anthology, back in 1966, Paul worked together with George Martin to score a film called The Family Way. should have taken a note, but I think that did win some sort of award.
Oh, yeah. Didn't they win an Ivor Novello Award?
Is that what it was?
I believe it was. Yeah.
So it's not like Paul has no experience scoring movies. Of course, George Martin, he did the score for Yellow Submarine and Hard Day's Night, those Beatles-related movies and things. So when they get Paul is eventually going to bring George on board, and then we'll talk about it. George is going to get hired to do the score component to the film. You know what kind of bugs me, though, guys?
Tell me.
Everything you read and see about this will sort of belittle George Martin a little bit. Like they'll say things along the line like Bond producers spent so much money on Paul to get him to write the theme that they had a limited monetary supply left. So they settled for George Martin because they could get him for less money because he wasn't a real composer.
Wow.
Yeah, I saw that most of their production budget, which was $25,000, most of that budget went to Paul McCartney.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how much went to George Martin, but yeah.
10,000. 10,000 went to George. And I understand that George, like I said, he's done The Family Way. He's done Beatles-related movies, which I guess when you think about it, he's going to do the Beatles movies because he works so closely with them.
Right.
But he's George Martin, guys. I mean, he writes I can't think of what the term would be, but anytime there's an orchestra on a Beatles song, he writes those
right.
scales or whatever they're called.
The scores and all those orchestral pieces. It's not like he has no experience doing orchestral music. Right.
He's legendary. I mean, the Beatles are the biggest band in the history of pop music, and he worked more closely with them than anybody did. So you're not settling by getting George Martin to score your film. Ugh.
Absolutely not. I mean, it's easy in retrospect to sort of see that. But I guess in the early 70s, because the Beatles and by extension George Martin was such a 60s thing, maybe there was a sort of a slight reaction to that. And George Martin wasn't considered maybe the coolest guy in the room in the 70s. It seems insane to say that looking back now because he's a musical god. But maybe there was a feeling at the time that, George Martin's had his day along with the rest of the Fab Four, which is crazy. But there we go.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that. And we also know that the Bond films themselves have taken a stance on the Beatles, right?
Oh, true.
Indeed, yes. In Goldfinger, Sean says you should only listen to the Beatles with earmuffs.
Yep.
Bit of a burn, bit of a read.
Yeah.
My dear girl, there are some things that just aren't done, such as drinking Dom Perignon 53 above a temperature of 38 degrees Fahrenheit. That's as bad as listening to the Beatles without earmuffs.
And that's not coming from Ian Fleming's books, is it? That's just that was written for the film. So I don't think Ian Fleming is to blame for this Beatles hate.
Exactly. But you know what? It was kind of inevitable. One day a Beatle would work on a Bond film. I just finished this book. I don't know if you've seen this book, Robbie. Love and Let Die.
Wow, yes. I mean, that goes into the fact that both the Beatles and Bond sort of premiered, the films at least, premiered on the same day as the Beatles released their first single, right?
Yeah,
so it was a huge day for pop culture, although I guess people didn't really realize it at the time. But yeah, that was seen as maybe a turning point in the 60s where pop culture suddenly shifted.
Right. And I mean, that fact has been out there since 1962. The fact that the Beatles and James Bond both had their first movie and first single on that same day, but I just never realized it until this book told me at point blank. So that was Friday, October 5th. Love Me Do was released and Dr. No was released upon the British public. Crazy timing, man. This whole book, it goes from that point up until No Time to Die, and it parallels the Beatles and then the solo work of the Beatles to what's happening with Bond. It's a fascinating book, man. It just sort of talks about how both acts were so important to the British public, and that there hasn't really been anything since that is on scale of those two things. They said maybe Harry Potter will prove to be as big as the Beatles and James Bond, but time will tell.
And of course, the sort of the strange intertwining of the Beatles and James Bond continues because Sam Mendes, who directed Skyfall and Spectre, he's directing this sort of quadrilogy, if we call it that, of biopics. So there's a film for each of the Beatles. It'll be interesting to see what happens there and if the films can be seen, as you were saying earlier, individually, or do you need to see all four of them for it to kind of make sense? But it's interesting that even now a Bond director is going to delve into the Beatles' past. And let's not forget that Ringo Starr ended up marrying a Bond girl.
Oh,
that's
course.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, Barbara Bach, who's in The Spy Who Loved Me. They, I think, are still together.
They are.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there you go.
They're really intertwined.
Let's talk about Paul. So,
yeah.
Did you guys see what Paul did to prepare to write this song for the Bond movie?
Yeah, I saw that he was asked to be sent a copy of Ian Fleming's novel, and he said, I read it and thought it was pretty good. And that afternoon, I wrote this song and went in the next week and did it. Like, okay.
Yep, he read the book on a Sunday and wrote the song on the following Monday. He said, I didn't want the song to be, you've got a gun, now go kill people, live and let die. I wanted it to be, let it go, don't worry about it. When you've got problems, just live and let die.
Oh, all right.
A nice philosophy.
Now, everything that I read does talk about how that sort of sentiment, that Paul didn't want this song to be too negative or too violent. But that book that I just mentioned, Love and Let Die, there is a little segment in there where it talks about, this is a pretty un-Paul McCartney-ish song in terms of lyrical content, because it's about someone who used to say live and let live. You know, Paul was always positive, and what do they call him in smash hits, like Thumbs Up Mecca or something?
Oh, yeah.
They had some Mecca Thumbs Up, some weird nickname for him. But they point out that this is the time period, like Robbie said, there's some question as to when the Beatles really broke up, because this time period was the Beatles were suing each other in court to try to dissolve their legal corporation or whatever. And so this book's Love and Let Die says that some people think that this is Paul with his frustrations for everything that's going on in his life that's so negative. That's why this was a good song for him to write, because it isn't a Paul McCartney sentiment, and it does let him get out that negative energy that he had building up inside of him.
And reading the book is not a bad idea at all, but actually, I imagine the screenplay and the book do diverge quite a lot. So he would have been better to read the screenplay if he's writing a song for the film. But nevertheless, lyrically, it does make sense.
He didn't get a chance to do that because they asked him to write the song before Tom Mankiewicz had even finished writing the screenplay, so that wasn't even an option. He had to do with the book.
Yeah, I think that was it Billboard or Hollywood Reporter, somebody on October 24th of that year, 72 or whatever, announced that Paul McCartney had just finished recording the new Bond song. The movie had only been being filmed for like 13 days at that point. It was very early in the process of the movie.
He recorded the song during the sessions for Red Rose Speedway, and that was between October 19th and the 21st in 1972.
Correct. And because of the stuff that was going on with the Beatles in court, I'm sure it's not entirely because of that, but this song is credited to Paul and Linda McCartney. The reason given has always been that Linda writes that little reggae section in the center of the song. That was her idea.
Ah, that was her bit. I see.
What does it matter to you? When you got a job to do, you gotta do it well. You got to give the other fella hand.
But at the same time, it also having Linda on the publishing for the song makes it so the money for it can't be held up in court as something Beatles related. So it was a good move on Paul's part for two reasons, because that's actually a really good section.
Well, I'm glad you say that, because that gets a little bit of hate in the Sound of 007 documentary. A couple of the talking heads are like, I don't know what's going on about the reggae section. You know, I could live without that bit. But I've lived with the film as long as I can remember. So I live with the song as long as I can remember. So to me, it's sort of naturally part of the song. But a lot of people seem to not like the reggae section.
Oh, really? I didn't know. Huh.
I know. Controversial.
I mean, that's something that I like about Paul McCartney. I always say this when we talk about Paul McCartney, but he has these songs that just develop and change, like Band on the Run, and he has a song We Got Married that does that. And so this has the piano part that sounds like any number of Paul McCartney songs. It has the reggae section. It has the explosive orchestra. That's just what I think of Paul McCartney doing, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a sort of schizophrenic approach, but it actually gives even more character and makes the forward momentum of the song work even better, I think.
So Paul was talking about the writing. He says that the writing in the song came quite easily, but I knew that something was missing. I had the verse and I had a chorus and I had the middle, but I didn't quite have the Bondness yet. And I knew I had to incorporate explosions somehow to bring in the excitement of a film. So I got in touch with George Martin. The song felt like it needed his arrangements. As it turned out, he had a secret yearning to work on a Bond movie too. I love what George did. He put some nice, weird, dissonant chords in it that gave it this sort of sinister Bond, it's a thriller thing. The orchestra filled in that missing element. We now had a Bond song. Which I love, because one of the books talks about how when you're working on a demo in 1972, there is no synthesizer that can simulate an orchestra. So when they were working on the demo of the song, they had like a 55-piece orchestra come in to help them record the demo.
That's
Wow.
so crazy. Everyone just come in here and just play some stuff. That is amazing.
And speaking of the reggae section, he being Paul, he talks about that section of the song too. He says, the reggae section was directly from having read the Fleming book. There was a moment that really turned us on to the fact that Bond had come from London and it was now in the Caribbean. I like that because we were keen on Jamaica. We used to holiday there and loved the music. In the book, Bond is in the blue waters and starts to realize that, quote, all the scales of big city life had fallen from him. I thought, hey, that's good. That moment in the song to me was letting the scales of city life fall away.
Nice.
Oh, well, that's very similar to what he did in his own life. You know, he moved away and moved up to Scotland and lived on a farm. So I could see that being a good parallel for him in his own life.
Oh, yeah, very true. Well, Paul really does dig Jamaica. He has a funny story about being in Jamaica when the movie was released. He says, around the time the film came out, we were on holiday in Jamaica. I tried to get into a screening as I thought it would be fun to watch the movie there since some of it was shot in the country. So I found a screening, but it was sold out. And they wouldn't let me in, even when I told them, I wrote the bloody tune. No use, no use, man, came the reply. Get out.
Oh, my gosh. That's so crazy. Poor Paul.
So, like, what do you guys think about this track? 1991, I was starting to listen to Bond music, and I borrowed a cassette that had the first 13 Bond songs on it from my friend in college. And this was always the dividing line for me. Not because Roger Moore took over and Sean Connery left, but because this was the first time that a Bond song was by an artist that I actually had in my collection and knew a lot about. It really changed the way I look at the song and what I hear with this song.
This is the first Bond theme that is considered like a rock song. You know, this is the first one that is not a ballad or a big orchestral or big band sort of style. This is a big change. You know, that it's a really interesting delineation of the Bond era because we've got a new Bond. We've got the first African-American love interest. We've got a new type of theme song. We've got a different composer. There's a lot of firsts here, and it's very significant.
Yeah. It's weird to think now that it was a sort of change in musical direction because to me, Live and Let Die sounds very much like part of Bond's DNA. It's one of the sort of quintessential Bond themes. But at the time, it was quite a left field kind of move to do something so rocky with this weird reggae interlude and what have you. So yeah, it's interesting that at the time maybe it was considered a bit like, oh, what's this? Whereas now we consider it one of the all-time classics.
Everything up to that song, like to me, it's tuxedos and evening gowns and singers that were just sort of like a fancier, higher class era. In 1991, 20-year-old Brian seeing Shirley Bassey and Tom Jones, Nancy Sinatra, and then Paul McCartney and Carly Simon in a couple years. You know, the mystique and the fanciness of those early themes to me sort of disappeared. Which isn't to say I didn't like them. Live and Let Die and Nobody Does It Better are two of the best songs ever written. It just was a drastic change.
It is a true change from one decade to the other. You know, even though Diamonds Are Forever is 1971, it's just barely in the 70s. And now we are truly in the 70s. And I think this really does mark a difference in all kinds of, you know, thematically, visually, and so musically as well. It makes sense for all of these things to be very different from what has come before because the 70s were a very different decade from the 60s.
Robbie, when do you think that the 80s Bond really started? Do you think that For Your Eyes Only was just as drastic a change as this was?
Probably not. I mean, in terms of the movie or in terms of the songs, I feel like For Your Eyes Only, the song is kind of a throwback to what's already happened with Shirley Bassey and what have you, something a bit more loungy. So I would say in terms of pure 80s-ness, we're talking A View to a Kill, really, which is when you had Duran Duran and a bit of synth on John Barry's soundtrack, big shoulder pads, eyeshadow, Grace Jones. Wow. I want to talk about that one now, but I'll save myself.
I think of John Glenn as being a very 80s director, though. Like, even if the music was harkening back in For Your Eyes Only, I think that the visuals or the way the film was put together, who did the previous one, Lewis Gilbert, right, did Moonraker?
That's right, yeah.
I think there's a quite a difference in the feel of Moonraker to For Your Eyes Only in terms of the direction, maybe.
And John Glenn is like, you know, an entirely spanned the 80s. So his first film was 81 and his last film was 89, at least in Bond terms. So he is completely dominating that whole decade. And yeah, his influence is very much felt.
I don't like when people make fun of George Martin. Like I said, I also don't like when people say things like John Glenn was only a good second unit director. I really enjoy mostly all those John Glenn movies. I think he was a strong director in the 80s.
He's directed more Bond films than any other director, so he must have been doing something right.
Yeah, right. Going back to George Martin, since I just mentioned him, I just wrote a few notes about his score. I know we're here mainly to talk about theme songs, but I do always like touching on the scores as well. And the George Martin score is pretty good. He's given 4 weeks to write this music before he had to start recording. And I was kind of shocked because he said that after talking to Guy Hamilton, that he had to come up with roughly 55 minutes of music.
That's it?
It seemed kind of short.
Yeah, even the boat chase lasts longer than 55 minutes. Right?
Right. I know. Oh my gosh.
And George says that even though the film takes inspiration from the current blaxploitation trend, he didn't really feel that he tapped into that scene for the music. He said, I just wanted to make as dynamic a sound as I could without losing the Bond feel. I think there are some moments in the score that sound like he's listening to that blaxploitation.
Yeah, I think that there's enough tinges or references to soul music or rockier type of music. There's definitely a different feel to the sound of the music in this film, which I think works just fine.
I mean, I was thinking if you were to make the same film today, Live and Let Die, you would probably want to get a person of color to do the theme tune, sing the thing, and compose. So it's interesting. Obviously, the 70s were a very different time, and there just weren't options to get a sort of a successful person of color doing a soundtrack. But it would be so interesting to hear, like, what if Nile Rodgers or somebody like that was given the reins to soundtrack Live and Let Die, and to give it a more authentic kind of black sound. That would be really interesting. I'm not saying that George Martin does a bad job at all, but right. He perhaps doesn't have the credentials to do a blaxploitation soundtrack. And it's such interesting to see what might happen were we to sort of remake the film today. I mean, there'd have to be quite a few changes.
Oh my goodness, yes.
I mean, I always think it's some bits haven't dated well, but overall, it's a miracle that it didn't date worse in a way, the film. I think, we're kind of okay to sort of, it hasn't been cancelled yet.
Right.
In the same way that in the previous film, we had the two gay assassins, Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd. That could have dated very badly. I actually think it's okay. And so, yeah, you're sort of treading carefully, but I think it's, all things considered, it could be a lot worse.
I have to agree completely. Yeah, it could be a lot worse. I guess if that's the best thing you can say. I don't know.
One thing that I thought was kind of cool is that George Martin is friends with John Barry because they both worked together at the BBC.
Oh, okay.
For parts of their career. And George Martin does call John Barry to kind of apologize for taking over the film. Not really apologize, but, he was feeling a little guilty. George Martin said that John Barry was a very good friend and he had no problems with me doing it. The one thing he told me was, just screw him for me, will you?
Oh, wow.
Wow, someone's got a bitter pill to swallow there.
Yep.
He was not happy.
I mean, considering everything we said in the beginning about the reasons why John Barry moved on, and then that quote right there, it's shocking to me that he comes back for the next movie.
Yeah. And then subsequently, at least 3 or 4 others. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It's pretty wild. But like Sarah said, the money set aside for the score was £25,000, probably. I have dollars written here. But that number comes from the fact that they gave John Barry $25,000 for the previous movie.
Oh, okay.
So that's all of a sudden, I guess for a while then, because they paid that once, they intend to pay it every time going forward.
Now the budget.
So Paul McCartney got $15,000 for that theme song, and then they were left with $10,000, and they gave that to George Martin to do his score. I checked it today on the little calculator online. That's about $181,000 in today's money.
Wow.
I'm sorry, not George's part of it. The $25,000 total was $181,000.
That seems like quite the bargain, honestly.
The theme song, Paul's theme song, also appears in the movie in the world of James Bond. James Bond listens to Paul's song, right?
Yes,
That's
he
right.
does, indeed.
I love when things happen in movies that are like that, even if it does take you out of the movie sometimes. But what do you guys think about the version of the song that Bond listens to?
When you were young and your heart was an open book, oh, you used to say, live and let live. But if this ever-changing world in which we live in guess you give it a cry. Say live and let die.
Yeah, it's I was trying to think of the name of the singer. Is it BJ Arno? Am I getting that right?
Yep, that is correct.
There's also a BJ Worth who's a parachutist, so I get them confused in my head. But anyway, yeah, she sings a much more sort of jazzy version of it in the film, in the Filet of Soul restaurant where Bond goes. So to hear it kind of in universe, so to speak, is quite bizarre. I think it's the only time that's ever happened in a Bond film where, you know, you'll often hear the melody in the background in the score perhaps, but to have it actually in universe sung to Bond, it's very unusual. But yeah, it's not a bad rendition. I think I prefer the Paul version.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, isn't it? Like you said, Brian, it kind of does take you out of the film for a moment because you just heard that song in the opening credits and wait, here it is again in the actual movie. But it's kind of fun, you know, it especially goes with the more kind of lighthearted nature of the Moore universe, of the films of the Roger Moore era. This is something that we could expect from Roger Moore. Yes, he's going to hear James Bond music in his own movie, you know, eventually. So,
all right, here's the trivia question for you guys. I can think of another time where Bond music is in a Bond movie, like the characters in the movie can hear it. Can you think of when that was?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
On the radio, in the boat.
Oh, I wasn't thinking of that, but yeah, in From Russia with Love.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ah, right at the end.
No, in the beginning.
When Bond
in the beginning.
When he and Sylvia Trench are kind of making out.
I see, and they're in their,
and then he
in
gets
their punt.
Right, before he gets the call on his car phone.
Great sport, this.
What did you say?
I said it's great sport, this punting. I couldn't agree with him more.
I may even give up golf for it.
Really? Not quite.
Ooh, souvenir from another jealous woman.
Yes, but I haven't turned my back on one since.
Yeah, it's on the radio in that boat.
That's true.
Yeah, you're quite right. I'd forgotten about that one. Well, I was thinking, and this also might not be what you're thinking about, Brian, in A View to a Kill, when he jumps from the bridge in Paris onto the boat and sort of crashes into a wedding. If you listen very carefully, and it's my friend who pointed this out, and I've sort of had struggled to hear it myself, but apparently the wedding band on the boat is playing the A View to a Kill theme, a very sort of wedding-y version. So I'm sure that James Bond had other things to think about at that moment rather than listening to the music. But apparently that's another example. What were you thinking of?
I was thinking of in the movie On Her Majesty's Secret Service, when Bond is being captured by Draco's men, a janitor whistles Goldfinger, the theme song to Goldfinger, when Bond walks by.
Oh.
That's right. Yeah.
That's crazy. I forgot about that.
This is all a nice way of them not having to pay royalties to anyone else. You know, they can just keep all the music within universe, so maybe they don't have to pay for it. Yeah.
Isn't there some Bond movie where they claim that like bullet shots, the sounds of some bullets actually
make the sound of the theme tune? Yes, that's in License to Kill in the tanker chase right at the end. That's one of the ones where everyone's like, oh yeah, I can hear that. And I've listened to it many times. I kind of see what they're saying, but it's never really stuck out to me as a thing. But yeah.
I can't hear it either.
I'm not aware of that.
So BJ, her version of the song is actually released as a single at the time. We'll put the picture in the show notes. It's a very James Bond inspired picture sleeve for the record.
Oh, cool.
She kind of just dropped down to one knee holding a gun.
Oh.
But when you see it, you'll laugh because she's holding the gun in like the worst possible way. I can't even explain it like with words, but if she fires that gun, she's going to break her own arm. She's going to break her arm over her own leg. It's very confusing, but it looks cool. Like as a still photo, it looks cool. She was a vocalist who had been around in the UK for a while. It just hadn't had any major successes. She did a number of cool things. She was uncredited in a film musical called Finian's Rainbow. She released a number of singles on a number of labels that didn't chart. And she was in the London cast of Oh Calcutta. And then right around the time that she was hired to record this song, she signed a contract with RCA. Soon after this experience, she finally did get some acclaim. She was in a live rock version of Shakespeare's Two Gentlemen of Verona, and she got really good reviews for that. But she never really became like a pop chart sensation.
It sounds like a challenging evening, a rock version of Two Gentlemen of Verona. I can't say that's got my bum on my seat for that one.
Yeah. Evidently, it was popular at the time. I don't know.
Yeah.
And according to paperwork by that guy that I mentioned earlier, Ron Cass, before they hired her to sing this song, they really wanted to have the Fifth Dimension appear in the movie and sing the song at the Filet of Soul. At first, I was confused because I always think the Fifth Dimension is the band that Kenny Rogers sang in.
Oh, yeah.
I forget what they were called.
I think that might have been the Third Dimension. Yeah, something like that.
But Fifth Dimension was Marilyn McCoo.
Yeah.
Who I know, and probably you know, Sarah, more so. In the 80s, we had this show here in the United States, Robbie, called Solid Gold.
Uh-huh.
And it was sort of just like a weekly pop music countdown chart. They had their own top 10, which was always a little bit different than the official Billboard charts. And maybe like 4 of the acts that were in the top 10 would be there to lip sync the song on the show. For a while, Marilyn McCoo was the host who would introduce the bands. And occasionally, if she would get to sing one of the songs, like I guess if somebody couldn't show up, if Aha couldn't quite make it to sing Train of Thought, Marilyn McCoo would sing it. I think for a while she was teamed with Rex Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And Andy Gibb for a while was the host of that show.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And Dionne Warwick.
Oh, yeah.
Who is connected to the Bond universe, right?
That's right. Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Yeah.
He's tall and he's dark, and like a shark, he looks for trouble. That's why the zeros double. Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. He's suave and he's smooth, and he can soothe you like vanilla. The gentleman's a killer, Mr. Kiss Kiss.
Paul's theme song was released as a single on June 1st, 1973, only about a month after the release of Red Rose Speedway, which Sarah mentioned before. The film was released here in America on June 27th, and then the following week, July 6th, in the UK.
Yeah. Did you see the first airing of the song was on a television special? But Live and Let,
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, Live and Let Die was on the 1973 television special, James Paul McCartney, and that showed on April 16th in the United States and the 10th of May in the UK. And they had a little segment with McCartney and Wings performing the song in the studio with clips of the film also being shown. So it was kind of a preview for the movie as well.
How exciting. This was in the days when you couldn't like rewind it and look at it again. So when you're watching it, you must have been like, oh my gosh, this is huge.
Yeah. So that was a really good teaser for the movie and the song as well.
So that special, James Paul McCartney, that was one of the things that they do talk about on the Amazon documentary. You mentioned before, Robbie, Paul wasn't like the coolest of cats at this time period. Mm-hmm. And him making an hour-long variety show for TV was one of the things that made him not very cool in the public eye. This show sounds like it was insane. They show some clips, and there's a big dance number with lots of dancers, and Paul and Linda are dancing too. Everyone is dressed kind of split down the middle. On one side, they're men in top coats and tuxedos, and on the other side, they're women in dresses and makeup. So they're always dancing turned to the side. So one shot, it looks like a bunch of men dancing, and then they turn the other way, and it's a bunch of women. And he invented that little cartoon mouse that lived under the stage.
Oh,
I can't think of his name.
I don't know. So it was odd.
It doesn't, he's not the coolest of cats, so it doesn't sound like this was probably helping his credibility in terms of having a cartoon mouse. I'm up for it. It sounds great, but maybe not amongst the rock fraternity.
Yeah.
So the movie was released and it had a worldwide gross of $161.8 million, which is about $1.19 billion in today's money. So that was a pretty successful film.
I would say so.
They must have been very happy with their choice of new Bond and their new direction. Here in the United States, it was the 8th biggest movie of the year. One of my favorite movies of all time, The Sting, was number 2, and the very terrifying Exorcist was number 1. And in the UK, I can't exactly pin down where it finished for the box office for the end of the year. Some sites list Live and Let Die as the number 1 movie at the box office for 1973, but then others say that The Sting was number 1. I guess it was probably either 1 or 2. And the song, because it's a Paul McCartney release and it's a James Bond movie, it's going to be reviewed by all the music press at the time. And I have a bunch of just short little clips from reviews.
Oh, good.
The Hollywood Reporter said the title song sounds like all the other Bond songs, as does the music by George Martin. But then Billboard said the best 007 movie theme of all, and one of McCartney's 2 or 3 most satisfying records ever.
Wow.
Wow. That is a big claim.
Yeah.
Variety says it is a serviceable melody lacking the guts of previous Bond themes.
What?
Yeah, thank you for that reaction. Lacking the guts. Really?
Rolling Stone said, the best record Paul McCartney has made since Let It Be. And then my last one here, NME said, McCartney's fairly reasonable solution to the given problem, write in less than 25 bars a theme tune for the new James Bond movie, is to let it be for the first half, wailing absently with a curious notion of grammar about this ever-changing world in which we live in, before sitting back to let a 3,000-piece orchestra do a man-in-the-streets impression of John Barry. It's not intrinsically very interesting, but the film will help to sell it and vice versa.
Ouch.
What the heck? It's not intrinsically very interesting.
And that's what they said.
I mean, we don't know who these reviewers are these days. Like these critics have thankfully disappeared into the mist of time, whereas we all know Paul McCartney, we all know the song. So I guess he's got the last laugh, right?
Indeed. Yeah.
They do have a point about the bad grammar. I will give them that.
Yeah.
in the world in which we live in is a bit of a clumsy lyric.
And I have seen where Paul has tried to kind of walk that back in a few cases where he's like, oh no, I think I really meant in which we're living. I think that was a misprint in the sheet music and whatever. I think I really meant to say in which we're living.
Yeah, that makes much more sense and is an easy fix. I'll give him the credit for that.
I'm not sure. I think what we really hear though is live in. I think that's him trying to correct it after the fact, kind of like Neil Armstrong, but I don't know.
I do have a quote about it that I wrote down because I love this quote. He says, I don't think about the lyric when I sing it. I think it's in which we're living, or it could be in which we live in. And that's kind of sort of wronger, but cuter. I love the fact that he says wronger.
Wronger, right.
But he actually said it.
So given that he says that, I fully believe that he did say in which we live in, because clearly he has a track record of not saying things as correctly as maybe he should.
However, at the end of the discussion in the interview, the last thing he says is, oh, I think it's in which we're living.
Yeah, okay. It's what we call poetic license.
So here in the U.S., the song hit number 1 on both the Cashbox chart and something called the U.S. Record World Chart, which by the 80s doesn't exist, so I've never heard of it before. But it never hit number 1 on Billboard. And it's one of those crazy situations where a song stalls at number 2 and then numerous songs jump over it to hit number 1.
Yeah, looking through the actual Billboard magazines for this time period was actually very confusing to me because there ended up being a typo in the Billboard magazine. And I was like really, really confused. But let's see, it got to number 2 on August 11th, 1973, right? Mm-hmm. And the number 1 song that week was The Morning After by Maureen McGovern, which was also from a movie. It was for the love theme from the movie The Poseidon Adventure. Then the next week, a different song hit number 1. It was Touch Me in the Morning by Diana Ross. However, when I was reading that actual issue of Billboard magazine that was scanned in, it actually said The Morning After. And I was so confused. I was telling him this and he's like, no, that can't be right. Sure enough, it actually says The Morning After, but then it says the artist is Diana Ross. And then down at number 4 is The Morning After, the real version of it, which had moved down to number 4 that week. But Billboard had it listed twice with 2 different artists. It was really confusing.
Their quality control was on summer vacation, I guess.
But it's interesting that so many of the songs dominating the charts back then were movie related.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That was much more of an industry back then, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And the coolest thing, I don't know why this delighted me so much. In the UK, the song peaks at number 9. The crazy thing is that the week that Live and Let Die peaks at number 9, George Harrison peaks at number 8 with Give Me Love, Give Me Peace on Earth from his album Living in the Material World.
Wow.
Give Me Love, which is a song you never hear anymore, actually did better than Live and Let Die in the pop charts in the UK. Blew my mind.
Yeah.
Living in the Material World was kind of like the last George Harrison album that was received really well, probably up until all those years ago, the John Lennon tribute song. And then Cloud 9 in the 80s. His albums sort of get really dirge heavy in the 70s. And Paul continues to be pop music and radio friendly stuff. So this, I think, is probably the last time you're going to see George Harrison beat Paul McCartney in the charts.
Sounded really well in other countries too. No big surprise there. It actually, did better in a couple other countries, better than the UK because it was only number 9 there. But in Canada and Norway, it got to number 2. And in Australia, it hit number 5. So that was pretty good. And it was top 20 in New Zealand, 25 in Japan, 27 in the Netherlands, 31 in West Germany, and 32 in Belgium. So it made a respectable showing in other countries around the world.
Well, it deserves to. It's awesome. And it was probably much to John Barry's sorrow. This was the first Bond song to be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Original Song. But ultimately, it loses to Barbra Streisand's The Way We Were.
Yeah, it was also nominated at the Grammys. It was nominated in the category of Album of Best Original Score written for a motion picture or television special. That was actually the whole score. But the winner for that was Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Neil Diamond.
Oh, okay. Wow. I have that one.
Live and Let Die did win Best Arrangement Accompanying a Vocalist for George Martin's arrangement of the song. So George Martin won.
Hey, that's cool.
Yeah, again, I wonder how John Barry felt about that.
Probably not too happy.
Maybe that's why he came back for The Man with the Golden Gun. He suddenly got something to prove.
Yeah,
maybe.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So what do you guys think about this score? Like, what's your feelings and your opinion on George Martin's score?
I kind of dig it. It's funky. And considering that George Martin hasn't really touched upon blaxploitation soundtracks before, he does a pretty serviceable job, I think, of marrying that sound with the Bond sound. Mm-hmm. He still manages to weave the Bond theme in quite a bit. And it sounds Bondian enough, or I should say John Barry enough, but it's also going in its new direction, which it needed to. He's got a sort of a precarious tightrope to walk here between sounding too much like John Barry and not taking it forwards enough and finding a whole new sound, but moving too far away from the Bond sound. He's kind of in the sweet spot here, I think. He does a pretty good job.
As a Bond fan, I always want things to sound like John Barry. If something sounds like John Barry, I give it a big thumbs up. But you're right. That would be a mistake with this movie. If Barry did this and just continued in the vein as what he'd been doing, there would be some juxtaposition between music and image that wouldn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, we discussed this a little bit ago where this is kind of like breaking tradition, or it's kind of, signaling a new era. We've got a new Bond, we've got a different setting, and we have a different composer. It's kind of odd to us nowadays to think that a British man is scoring the soundtrack for this movie that's like very heavily Black oriented. But he walks a good tightrope between those two worlds and keeps the world of James Bond still there. We've got a lot of horns, which is great. Very horn heavy, but not horn heavy in the orchestral style. It's more like jazzy horns and things like that. We've got a soul feel, an island feel. He has a lot of different boxes that he has to tick off, and he does them all, I think, quite well. And I think it would have been harder for John Barry to actually pull this off as successfully. That sounds strange, but I think just given all of these other differences in this movie, I think that it would have been a little bit challenging for him.
Agreed.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think one of the coolest moments of the film is the very first thing that happens when we get Bond walking out in the gun barrel sequence.
Mm-hmm.
The music is it. Yeah. If the movie's starting and you're looking down at your popcorn or you're putting your soda on the floor, you can't help but instantly look up when that music plays because it's the Bond theme. It's the music that always plays in the gun barrel, but it's so different sounding.
And I literally said that yesterday when you had put on the movie to just have it on in the background for a little while, and it came on, and I'm like, that sounds so different. I was like, it's obviously still James Bond, but I'm like, wow, this is really different.
It's cool though.
Yeah, it's got some swag.
It does.
I don't think people don't say that anymore, do they? But
we can say it.
I don't know what young people say. I would say this gun barrel and License to Kill are the two that really kind of hit you between the eyes. Michael Kamen does an amazing gun barrel.
Oh, yeah.
With License to Kill. We'll get to that in 2032 or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I like this score a lot. I probably wouldn't say I love it. I probably wouldn't have it in like my upper echelon, but I like it a lot. I think it's better. Marvin Hamlish is like a really famous movie composer, and I think George Martin does a better job than him. I like this score better than the score for Spy Who Loved Me, but I don't like it as much as Bill Conti's For Your Eyes Only score, and people make fun of that one because it's sort of like disco influenced after the disco era is over. But I really like especially the slower, mellow songs in that score. But this one serves its purpose really well, I think. And like we said, I do hear some of that blaxploitation influence, even though he said he wasn't influenced by that. But I hear it in there, and I think he does a good job. What do you guys think about the theme song?
As probably mentioned before in previous episodes, I think that this is the final part of the ultimate trilogy for me. The run of Bond themes that are fantastic, starting with On Her Majesty's and We Have All the Time in the World, then following that with Diamonds Are Forever, and then this is a third. These are the holy trinity for me. So it's a 10 out of 10 for me in terms of the song.
Oh, wow. I love it.
It's an awesome song. I love this. It's excellent. I love Paul McCartney. Love the types of songs he does where they kind of change and have different sections. I'm always a big fan of that. As far as Bond themes, it's in my top 5 for sure, but I'm not sure that it could beat out View to a Kill or The Living Daylights. And for me, You Only Live Twice is firmly at number 1. So we're going to find Live and Let Die somewhere in that top 5. On any given day, it's going to be, 3, 2, 4, I don't know, somewhere in there.
This is one of the Bond songs that I have collected live. That's one of the things I like to try to do if I can, try to see a Bond song performed live by the original artist. So this is the second one that we've talked about because we saw Tom Jones do Thunderball.
Yes, we did.
And then we saw Paul McCartney do Live and Let Die on his, what year was that, 2014?
2016.
2016 tour. He plays it to great effect. He still plays it today when he plays live. He's got fireworks, pyrotechnics. We saw it in a big arena. And the
stadium outside.
Yeah. And the fireworks were just over the entire stadium, just lighting up the night sky.
I feel like we could feel the heat from those, even though we were, we were down in the stadium, but I feel like we could just feel the heat because it was just so big and huge. It was amazing.
It was amazing. And that was a great night. It was the first and only time that we've seen Paul McCartney. There are 2 Paul McCartney songs that we love. I mean, we love a lot of his songs, but there are 2 especially that we sing a lot and that most people, I think, dislike.
Off the beaten track, I would say.
Temporary Secretary off of McCartney 2 and 1985, the last song off of Band on the Run. That's a really catchy song, but he sings it in this weird voice. No one ever left alive. And we said, man, if he would sing either one of those songs, that'll make the night for me. That'd be so great, but he never will. And he ended up singing them both.
Yeah, within the span of like 15 minutes, I think. They were like that far apart. We lost our minds.
I've never had the pleasure of seeing him live, and time is ticking, really. I need to get going on that. But I want to see Live and Let Die live. And do you know the Frog Chorus? One of Paul McCartney's more maligned songs? That was huge over here because the video was featured Rupert the Bear, who was like a kid's animated bear. The whole video was shown a lot on kids' TV. I was obsessed with the Frog Chorus when I was growing up, and I'd love to see him do that live, although I don't think it's probably in his set list anytime soon.
Probably not. I think George Martin scored that as well.
Wow. That's, the accolades keep on coming.
Oh, yeah. High on his list of achievements there.
I think with Temporary Secretary, when he did that one live, like we said, we were in a stadium.
Yeah.
I think Sarah and I were the only 2 people standing up dancing to it. Everyone else sat down because they were like, what is this?
We went crazy. So I don't know if you could see us from where we were, but we were truly appreciative of that.
So it was great to see this one live. And the thing that makes it so great is that, to me, this is the greatest Bond theme. 2 songs come close. In my opinion, there are 2 other Bond songs that are close to giving this one a run for its money. Nobody does it better in View to a Kill. But at the end of the day, I cast my vote for Paul and Live and Let Die.
So this is your number 1 Bond theme.
Yep.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, we're peaking.
Yeah. Nowhere to go but down. So.
Yeah. But you've got your 2 and 3 still to come, right?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Some 80s synths to come.
I'm just a sucker for that stuff. I can't help it.
So let's talk about briefly here just the legacy of the song, maybe, since we just mentioned Paul still does this one live. The song has never been forgotten. In the 90s, do you guys remember the terrible cover by Guns N' Roses?
Oh, yeah.
I do. I remember hearing that on the radio and thinking, what's going on? Why would you touch what sacrilege has been broken here to even dare to cover the song?
Yeah.
But it was quite a big hit.
It
I think.
was.
It was.
It was
Yeah.
bigger hit in the UK than it was in the United States, actually. It got to number 5 on the UK singles chart. It only got to number 33 on the Billboard Top 100 chart. So, yeah.
Oh, it was so bad.
It was.
And I'll tell you why they did it. I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm sure. It's because at the time, they released 2 albums on the same day. Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. I still remember the day it came out. I don't know why. I don't like Guns N' Roses. But they had to fill 2 CDs. Because remember, this is the era of CDs. So like an album is, because you can put 79 minutes of music on a CD, a lot of times early on people would. So they had to have a ton of music for these 2 albums.
Yeah.
So they just had covers.
They did have other covers like Knocking on Heaven's Door. Yeah, they just did all kinds of songs.
Oh, and it's so bad.
And it was actually also nominated for a Grammy in the category of Best Hard Rock Performance. So this song is obviously very award-worthy, nomination-worthy, even when it's done by Guns N' Roses. Now, it didn't win, I will tell you that, but it was nominated.
And Generation Z. What is Gen Z?
In terms of like, when were they born?
Yeah.
Gen Z. So that comes after millennials, doesn't it?
I think it's late 90s, maybe early 2000s.
Yeah.
I'm truly not sure.
Well, I'm told that Gen Z, the song Live and Let Die, is one of the few aspects of the Bond franchise that they recognize. But it's because they don't associate it with Bond. They associate it with the Frog King's funeral in Shrek the Third. So evidently there's a Frog King. So it's another connection between Paul and frogs.
Oh, wow. And I was just thinking how in Shrek 2, there's a bush that looks like Shirley Bassey. They make a joke about it. So there's the connections just keep on coming.
Oh, this is really
That's
wild.
crazy. I didn't know that.
Oh, man.
And the last thing I have is that in 2006, there was a UK poll on the Bond songs. And amongst people aged 25 to 44, Live and Let Die finished first.
Oh.
Best Bond song.
Okay.
And then overall, it finished as the number 3 Bond song. Number 2 was Diamonds Are Forever. And number 1 was Goldfinger.
Well, how do you feel about Chrissy Hynde's version of this song?
When you were young and your heart was an open book, you used to say, live and let live. But if this ever-changing world in which we live makes you give in and cry, say, live and let die.
We didn't talk about that, but I know. But she covered this song on the compilation Shaken and Stirred, the David Arnold James Bond project. And she covers Live and Let Die on that.
I forgot about that.
Oh, well.
Me too, which maybe speaks about the fact that it's not really registered with us in a hugely positive way. I mean, I do listen to that album, but it's not one of the ones that I go back to, that particular track. I don't particularly go back to that one. But it's nice that Chrissy tried to put her own spin on it. And she, of course, is another Bond connection because she supplies some of the songs for the Living Daylight soundtrack.
Yeah. Just 10 years earlier, she was heavily involved with James Bond. And
I'll agree with Robbie. That isn't one that I go to often from that album. I mean, I love Chrissy Hynde. I have all the Pretenders albums.
Right.
I think she is one of the best voices in rock. But that one did win me over. The songs that I think of most from that album are Diamonds Are Forever, Thunderball with Martin Fry.
Yeah.
The instrumental, that cool instrumental version of the space capsule.
Oh, yeah.
And even though I've never really been a huge fan, Iggy Pop does a very good version of We Have All the Time in the World, in my opinion. So that's all I have. Do you guys, anything else that we didn't touch on that you wanted to talk about for Live and Let Die?
Well, a couple of footnotes to do with the Bond girls, because we mentioned Diana Ross earlier, and she was actually considered to play Solitaire in the film. So there was it's a parallel universe in which we get Diana Ross being a Bond girl, being the main Bond girl.
Wow.
I have a feeling there was probably some pressure from the studio to cast a white person because so much of the cast is black, and the other Bond girl, who I'm going to talk about in a minute, is also black. So maybe there was a pressure to have somebody else cast. But I know Diana Ross was definitely being considered, and that would have been pretty extraordinary. It reminds me of Grace Jones being cast in A View to a Kill, just to have somebody who's already quite an iconic figure as a Bond girl. It's quite a cool kind of overlap of different cultures there. Shame we didn't get that, but we do get Jane Seymour instead, who was also fantastic. And the other main Bond girl in Live and Let Die is Gloria Hendry. And I don't know if you're aware that she's now a bit of a singer herself. She does these jazz nights in New York.
Oh, I didn't know.
Which I haven't had the pleasure of going to see, but judging by her social media, she's still very much active and singing. She does other Bond songs as part of her repertoire. So yeah, if you're ever in the New York area, check out if Gloria Hendry is performing, because I think that could be a pretty good night.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
That'd be great to see a Bond girl performing.
I know. Something that you just said reminded me of something I wanted to show you. Check out who we met in December.
Oh my word. She's actually there.
She is.
It's not been photoshopped.
No. We were standing right next to her.
And in fact, when we met her, I got her to sign this.
Oh, beautiful. To those who don't have the pleasure of eyes at the moment, this is a picture of Roger and Jane Seymour in the climax of Live and Let Die. And it's signed to Brian and Sarah.
Yes.
Love Jane Seymour. Wow.
She was very kind to us. She was very nice. And I had plans of asking her about James Bond. But when we walked up to meet her, I was wearing a shirt with Freddie Mercury on it. And she said, I knew Freddie Mercury in real life. And we then proceeded to talk to her the entire time about Freddie Mercury. Because when are you going to meet somebody who knew Freddie Mercury in real life?
Sure. Yeah, that's fair enough. And she's probably had every James Bond conversation going. So she was probably relieved to talk about something else, to be honest.
Probably.
Yeah, she's the one that brought it up. So it was pretty cool.
What was the occasion? How did you meet her?
It was a Christmas convention. She now makes Christmas. She had a Christmas movie for the Hallmark Channel. So we were at this Christmas convention and she was there.
Nice.
We had a lot of fun.
And Jane Seymour really is very small in real life. she's very, very, very short. Very petite.
So that is our discussion of Paul McCartney's Live and Let Die. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it and maybe learned something you didn't know about the world of James Bond or the world of Paul McCartney. But before we go...
Oh, yes, that's right.
Our tradition when we get Robbie on the show is to put his Bond knowledge to the test. We always ask him 4 Bond trivia questions. He's getting nervous. He was smiling the entire time we recorded, but the smile was just...
shifting in my seat.
Yeah. So we always take a card out of the reel-to-reel picture show James Bond 007 movie trivia game, and we posed 4 questions to him. Robbie, it's been a while we've been doing this. We've recorded 5 shows together. We did the trivia on 4 of them. For some reason, on the 3rd one, we forgot to do it. So I went through all episodes last night to figure out where you stand currently with your score. And out of a total 16 points, due to various bonus questions and bonus points, you have 21 out of 16.
Okay. That's what maths is working in my favor there somehow.
And you have only ever missed 1 question.
I'd like to say it's been haunting me, but I can't remember what that was.
That's good.
I've blanked it out.
The question was, in what city was Cranston playing chess in the beginning of From Russia with Love?
I'm happy to leave that in the past, to be honest.
So today we have 4 more questions. This will bring the total points up to a total of 20. Are you ready to go?
I'm as ready as I'll ever be, yes.
All right.
So Sarah's going to pose the questions. I'll just let you know the categories so you can kind of get your brain into the right gear for each one. The first question is going to be the category Bond Basics, Beauties, Baddies, and Props.
Oh, the props is letting down the alliteration there, but never mind. Yeah, okay. Hit me.
All right. Well, in this case, it happens to be a question about the Bond beauties. So the question is Tatiana Romanova a corporal, a sergeant, or a captain with Russian state security?
Oh, no.
Corporal, sergeant, or captain?
This could be my second From Russia with Love related fail.
Uh-oh.
I have to say this is probably my weak spot, From Russia with Love.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. It's going to be a guess. Go through the options again. Corporal.
All right. Yep. Corporal, sergeant, or captain?
I don't think she's a captain. Let's go sergeant. I don't even know what's the highest ranking, to be honest, but let's go sergeant.
Oh, I am so sorry to tell you that is incorrect. The correct answer is corporal.
Oh.
Would you like to try for like a bonus question on the back here on the same category?
I can only try and improve on the shame that I've brought upon myself. So yeah, let's go for it.
All right. Well, perhaps you remember how many lovers she has had.
What is this, a perverts convention?
Well.
How many lovers? Well, I'm imagining being a Bond film, probably not many. If I'm just going to pluck a figure out of nowhere, I'm going to go with 2.
Well, she actually had 3, at least according to what Rosa Klebb had in her file.
Oh.
That's all right. That one doesn't really count.
That is crazy that you've missed 2 questions and they were both that movie.
Yeah. Let's get into the Roger era, hopefully, and then I'll be saving myself, getting some credibility back.
Well, we'll see.
Well, the Roger era won't be the next question because the next category is called Sean Connery and George Lazenby films.
So, yeah. Luckily for you, perhaps, I don't know. It's a Sean Connery one. It's strangely worded, but I'm going to read it as it is. Is the health spa called Woodlands or Shrublands that Bond visits in Thunderball?
Okay, I'm happy to say I know the answer to this one. It's Shrublands.
Yes, that is correct. You've got it. Do you want the bonus question?
Go on then.
Who is the Spectre agent assigned there?
That's a good question. So there's the one who gets the makeover and becomes the pilot, who's a guy. And then there's, I was going to say Fiona Volpe, but she doesn't go to Shrublands, does she? Okay, so it's the guy, and he's called Angelo or something like that. Or maybe that's the guy he's trying to be. Oh, no. It's all falling apart again.
This is just a bonus. It doesn't count. It doesn't count.
That's just as well. I will know it when you say it.
Oh, Brian, do you want to answer that?
My synapses have failed me.
He's a count, right?
That is correct. Yes, he is a count.
Count Lippy.
Yes.
Count Lippy.
Yes. All
Sorry,
right.
I needed Brian's help there.
Team effort. That's fine. Well
all right.
done.
I wrote that down as a bonus point awarded to Robbie. So
you make sure you get a point yourself, though. That was.
All right. I hate to be greedy, but it is Monday. I can use a point to start the week. All right. So this next question is from the category Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton, and Pierce Brosnan films.
Here we
Beautiful.
go. I'm sure you'll know this. Is the ship called the St. David or the St. George that is destroyed following the opening credits of For Your Eyes Only?
That would be the St. George.
And you are correct. Very,
Oh,
very
goodness.
nice. And there is not a... Oh, yeah. The bonus question, it sinks off the coast of what country?
Well, in the film, it's kind of between Greece and Albania. Most of the film is set in Greece, so let's go Greece.
Unfortunately, it was Albania.
It's Albania.
But that's okay.
You see. It's a very thin stretch of water. I've been to Corfu, where they film a lot of For Your Eyes Only, so I was kind of in the right area.
Yeah, absolutely. That was still, I'd say, close enough. You know, their GPS could have been off, you know?
Exactly, yeah.
One of my favorite lines in all of Bond movie history is from that movie, guys.
Oh, yeah?
I quote it a lot. Bach, ATAC, St. Cyril, Bach.
Yeah, he does actually do that with the parrot call and everything.
Wow.
It's amazing.
It's not the sort of phrase that will ever crop up naturally in conversation either. You've really got to shoehorn it in.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
But I make sure that I do that. All right. And so your last question for the round is, wow, this could be a lot of different things. Extras, stars, credits, ballads, music, and words.
It's just hodgepodge.
That's everything, basically.
Everything else. Well, lucky for you, I can tell you that this one is about Bond credits. So here is the question. Which film's opening credits features dancing girls painted...
That's narrowing it down.
I know, right? Painted with glowing neon tribal designs.
Hello. I mean, tribal designs I'm not really sure of, but the neon aspect suggests A View to a Kill for sure.
And that is correct. Yes, I don't know if I would agree about the tribal designs either, but that's okay. What do we see the 007 logo painted on as your bonus question?
During the same title sequence?
Yes.
Well, I don't know how to word this, but it's on a pair of breasts.
That's exactly how it's worded in the card. A pair of breasts. Very good.
It's a very pleasing sort of unzipping, which produces the cleavage effect needed to project 007 onto it. But you can go and enjoy that for yourself, yeah.
Okay.
We'll put a picture in the show notes.
Oh, will we?
All right. So congratulations, Robbie. You've actually gained some ground, even though I know you were feeling down on yourself about missing the Marshall Love question, but you've actually gained some ground because before, like I said, you had 21 points out of 16. So there was a 5-point differential. You're now at 26 points out of 20. So
wow. Okay. The credit score is still good. Yeah. I've clawed back some credibility there. And what I'm taking away from this is that I need to go and watch From Russia with Love another dozen times, which is not a chore in my eyes. So if I'll do that, I will do that tonight.
When you watch a Bond movie, in your house. How do you watch them? Do you own them physically or do you stream them?
I do own them, but not on Blu-ray. I only have the DVDs, shamefully. So if I do watch them, it tends to be streaming just because they're better quality. So yeah, as if the film studio doesn't have enough of my money, I end up spending more money to watch it on streaming. But nowadays, because I know the films backwards and forwards, and with the exception of From Russia with Love, it has to be an occasion really for me to want to sit down and watch one. It's not the sort of thing I will pop on in the background. It's got to be an event.
Oh,
but fortunately, I have enough friends who are like, shall we watch a Bond film tonight? For it to be an occasion and we can watch it together. I like watching them with other people now because otherwise it's me and the film, and we've done that too many times. So it's nice to see it with a new perspective of other people.
Yeah, that's cool. And when you watch them on streaming, are they the 4K transfers?
I believe so. It's what was on Prime. It's terrible not to have a physical copy in high resolution, about 4K, because you just never know if Prime are going to take them off of the service. And in this day and age, I do worry that there'll be a digital apocalypse one day and everything will be lost that's sort of stored on file in a GoldenEye kind of scenario. Yeah. So we'll all end up going back to analog and watching these things on VHS or DVD. And thankfully, I've still kept those because, I need to know that there's one within reach at all times.
There you
it's very
go.
comforting to me. Yeah.
Yep, totally get that.
Well, Robbie, we want to thank you so much for joining us today. It was a lot of fun to talk about Roger Moore's first outing as James Bond with you. And I'm looking forward
Thank
to
you for
talking
having
about
me.
Our pleasure. I'm looking forward to talking about The Man with the Golden Gun. I always say this every time we talk. I'm like, we have to do this more often, so I'll say it again. Now that we're in the Roger era, we should definitely keep the ball rolling.
Yeah, we can keep the momentum going, and we'll be at The Living Daylights, your favorite, before we know it.
Yeah, it's just around the corner. So remind us again, we mentioned this in the beginning, but where can people find you if they want more hilarious James Bond content?
Thank you. Yes, I am on Instagram and Threads and what's the other one? Oh, Blue Sky, all under the handle of Quantum of Silliness. And when Bond 26 news does start to come in and we get some proper movement in terms of production, I hope to sort of be covering that and being across all the news. So if you want to stay in touch with what's going on, do give me a follow. And hopefully we shall chat very shortly about more Roger Moore goodness.
I hope so. So let's definitely get that on the calendar. But in the meantime, thanks again for joining us today. It was awesome.
Thank you.